Hello everyone. I'm sorry for the long wait. I know it's been just under a year, but we are back once again with some more reading of The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek. I always envisioned coming back to reading it, I just didn't know when, and today's the day. So let's begin with where we picked up. Chapter 2. Well, boys, Steve McClendon began, I think we all know why you're here. Leif and Rex sat in two formal high-backed chairs in the McClendon living room. Rex's parents, along with Leif's mom, Bonnie, were lined up across from them on an antique wood-trimmed couch. Leif figured that the impending discussion would not be pleasant, and he'd only seen Rex's mother let two types of people sit in her living room. Out-of-town guests she was desperately trying to impress, and children she was desperately trying to discipline. Yes, sir, Rex replied, while Leif quickly repeated. Even though Alicia had been the one who leveled Wayne Whitewood, she wasn't present. As usual, Rex's parents had decided to treat the two boys as a unit, something Leif's mom had passively accepted years ago. Leif had grown used to receiving whatever punishment Rex did, and he didn't mind. Enduring the same sanctions as his best friend somehow made them closer. What you two did, Rex's dad continued, it was just so disrespectful. There it was. The worst offense a Bleak Creek youth could commit, failing to show proper reverence for the institutions the town held so dear. And in a sick twist of fate, because their stunt had rudely interrupted a prayer during a pig pickin', they had simultaneously dishonored the town's most sacred deities, God and pork. Double whammy. I thought we raised you better than that, Rex's mom said, looking over to Leif's mom, who put down one of the at least 5-year-old Andes mints she'd picked up from the porcelain bowl on the coffee table. She nodded in an effort to lay on the collective condemnation. You did, Mom, Rex offered. It was really stupid, and I can promise you that it won't ever happen again. Leif signaled his agreement by assuming the most contrite posture he could, pressing his knees together and drawing his elbows to his side. Well, it won't happen again because I'm taking my camera back. Your dog move is over, Rex's dad said. Rex and Leif exchanged a look like they'd both been punched in the stomach. No, Dad, please, Rex pleaded. We're almost done with it. I was never comfortable with you making a movie about a ghost in the first place, Rex's mom said. There's no such thing as ghosts. The Bible says absent from the body, present with the Lord. That stuff is demonic. It's just a movie, Mom. Please, please, please. Don't take the camera. We've been working on this all summer. Leif thought Rex was going to cry, and figured it might help the cause. No, son, I'm sorry. You can finish it later, Rex's dad insisted. Because, you know, your mother's right, he added, looking to his wife. You're starting high school. There's no time to be messing around with demon stuff. Leif doubted that Rex's dad really thought Polterdog was satanic, but figured he wanted to present a united parental front. If you start behaving, not to mention began putting some of that moving energy into getting yourself in shape for basketball tryouts, then maybe you can use the camera next year. Leif looked to Rex, who sat quiet, resigned that arguing further would only make things worse. And we think you should take a break from spending time with Alicia, Rex's mom added. What? No! Leif had planned to stick to nonverbal communication, but he couldn't help himself. It wasn't even her fault. We're the ones who made her run into Mr. Whitewood. It doesn't matter whose fault it is, Leif's mom said, breaking her similar practice of letting the McClendons do the talking. Between hitting Mr. Whitewood and that mannequin situation, she's getting a bad reputation. That's right, Rex's dad said. And you two are too. We'd hate to have to bring the Whitewood school into this, but Leif found himself short of breath. In all previous disciplinary episodes in this room, the McClendons had never mentioned the possibility of Wayne Whitewood's reform school. This was new and terrifying. Leif tried to steady his shaky knees as Rex began to speak again. Mom, Dad, Mrs. Nelson, he said, making eye contact with each adult as he addressed them. We know what we did was wrong, and we feel horrible about it. We'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust, even if that means not finishing Polterdog, and never talking to Alicia again. Leif nodded accordingly, though he was relatively certain his best friend was being strategic, rather than sincere. Leif pedaled in the dark, his mind racing even faster than his bike. He'd convinced himself that Alicia running into Mr. Whitewood, and him no longer being allowed to be her friend, was all his fault. It didn't matter that Rex had given the signal too early. He had been the one to suggest the bacon belt, and he had been the one who had tackled Tucker, causing Alicia to turn her head at the worst moment. He kept running through the scene, each time hearing the humiliating moans of the usually composed Wayne Whitewood. What an absolute nightmare. He had also correctly guessed that Rex had never intended to keep his promise to his parents. Later that night, Rex had found the camcorder exactly where he knew his dad would hide it, the not actually secret cabinet in the garage. Rex had then done his Rex thing, telling Leif about the amazing destiny that awaited them if they could just finish the film. "First, we win the Durham Festival," he said, standing on the back deck overlooking the woods behind his house, his arms moving in sweeping motions, like he was materializing the future right in front of them. "Then, we get into a big one, maybe even Sundance. Then we get distribution. Next thing you know, we're getting coffee with Robert Zemeckis. Coffee with Zemeckis! Are you telling me you want to say no to that?" He was extremely convincing. Coffee with Zemeckis felt so possible. Plus, Leif had learned that once Rex set his sights on something, trying to dissuade him was futile. That was why he now found himself barreling down the middle of Main Street after midnight, on his way to meet up with Rex and Alicia to film one of the last remaining scenes of Polterdog. However, the two restrictions they'd been given by their parents, not hanging out with Alicia, was far more concerning to Leif than not finishing their movie. And this wasn't just because he was worried about the demise of their tight friend group. No. Lately he'd been thinking about Alicia in a very different way. It had started during their first day of shooting Polterdog. Alicia and Tucker were cavorting in a field for an early scene meant to establish Jessica and Mr. Bones' easy, playful rapport before Mr. Bones bit it. Alicia wasn't an animal lover, but she was a great actor. As Leif watched her dote on Tucker for the first time in her life, burying her face in his shaggy neck on the same soccer field where Leif had made minor contributions to at least 2 rec league victories, a strange half-formed image sprang into his head. Grown-up versions of him and Alicia sitting by a fireplace, Tucker sprawled in Alicia's lap as Leif worked on a crossword puzzle, mug of coffee by his side. "Are the kids asleep?" Leif had imagined himself asking. "I think so," grown-up Alicia had responded. "But you're not entirely sure?" grown-up Leif had asked. No, I'm mostly sure." The strange daydream about grown-up Alicia's uncertainty regarding their unborn children's consciousness was interrupted by real Rex asking real Leif if he thought that last take had enough face-licking. Yeah, that's plenty," Leif had said with a false confidence. He had tried to put these thoughts about Alicia out of his head, but that only seemed to intensify them. His distant future visions had been replaced with present-day fantasies, the two of them tandem biking through the woods, feeding each other popcorn at the Twin Plaza, eating a fancy dinner at TGI Fridays, and making out. A lot. Complete with serious mouth exploratory tongue action. After a week of this, Leif had admitted to himself, and his diary that he called it a journal, "I, Leif Nelson, have a crush on Alicia Boykins." Though it felt good to acknowledge, he knew he wasn't going to do anything about it. Yes, she was smart and funny and fearless and trustworthy and so pretty that he had no idea why he hadn't fully registered it before, but she was also part of his best friend triangle, or, as Alicia had coined them, the triumvirate. He instinctively knew no good could come of it, so he had made a vow to himself, and to his diary, that he would tell absolutely no one, not even Rex. As an unspoken corollary of this vow, Leif had made sure nothing of this behavior gave even the slightest hint of his crush. At times, he swung too far in the other direction, harping endlessly on Alicia's minimal flaws, such as her inability to be punctual, seeming like he actually despised her, but he preferred that to revealing the truth, which would surely alter the trio's dynamic forever. Besides, the odds seemed good that Alicia didn't feel the same way, so what was the point of bearing his soul for no reason? Or at least, that had been Leif's philosophy, until he'd been forbidden to see her. And before the incident with Whitewood had screwed everything up, he convinced himself that he could carry his hidden crush around with him while still enjoying her presence. Savoring the moments when she playfully put him in a full Nelson, her hair brushing up against the back of his neck. He could live with that, but the thought of only being able to see her in secret as they filmed the last few scenes of Polterdog filled him with an electric desperation, like he had to communicate his feelings now. Adding to the sense of urgency, Alicia had not only agreed to finish the movie, but insisted they shoot tonight. Maybe she felt the same connection between the two of them after all. Really? Rex and Leif had said simultaneously, their heads pressed together to the earpiece of the phone at Rex's house earlier that evening, while both the McClendons and the Boykinses attended the back-to-school PTA meeting at Bleak Creek High. Yeah, really, Alicia said. We've got 3 weeks. Just a few more scenes, and then the edit. We're cutting it close either way. We don't want to get you in even more trouble, Leif said. You don't get me in trouble, Leif, Alicia responded, grinning through the phone. I get myself in trouble. And anyway, my parents and I had a talk, and they actually seem pretty okay about what happened. They know I didn't run into Mr. Whitewood on purpose, plus the idea of having some kind of secret friendship sounds pretty sweet, like we're a secret society or something. Leif couldn't help but smile. Okay, he said. Yeah, Rex agreed. Let's finish this thing. Meet you at your place at midnight. Word, Alicia said. See ya. In just a few short hours, Leif might be embarking on a clandestine romance with the girl of his dreams, a real Romeo and Juliet situation. He tried to convince himself that he didn't care about the outcome, though of course he was hoping Alicia might want to be the crazy girlfriend, and that Rex would be supportive. Crazier things had happened. Leif brought his bike to a stop a couple houses down from Alicia's, the appointed meeting spot with Rex, a dark patch in between streetlights, and waited. As he scanned the house in front of him, which belonged to a new family that had recently moved to town from Nebraska, a place that seemed so foreign as to be exotic, Leif flinched at the sight of a pair of eyes staring at him from only a few feet away. Is that Rex, waiting to do one of his classic jump scares, he thought? Or are these Nebraskans actually insomniacs who walk the streets at night? But as his eyes adjusted, he saw it. A raccoon perched atop the Nebraskan's trash can. Leif let out a loud hiss, and the raccoon, seeming to understand it as a universal sound for "get the hell out of here," darted away into the night. Leif pressed the light on his calculator watch. 12:09. He was glad to be early. More time to rev himself up to make this happen. He figured the most appropriate moment would be after they picked Alicia up and made it to the woods. The woods, after all, were very romantic. While Rex scoped out the shots, Leif would open his heart to Alicia. Hey dude, Rex said, gliding up on his foot-powered scooter. You're still riding that thing? Leif asked. It was too dark to make out all the features of Rex's face, which, after his encounter with the raccoon, freaked him out a little. Yeah, Rex said, and I'm gonna be riding it for a while. They're predicting that by 1998, bikes will be practically extinct. No offense. Who is they? And objects can't go extinct. You know what I mean. Obsolete. Isn't a bike actually faster and more efficient than a scooter? See, that's where you're wrong, Rex said, caressing the scooter's handlebars. This puppy has serious speed. You're just not using it right. I've never ridden a scooter. Exactly. You just proved my point. Now let's go get Alicia. Leif was not a fan of Rex's tendency to declare things cool, no matter what counter-evidence was presented, or the way he took it upon himself to prematurely end arguments to preserve the illusion that he was right. But it didn't matter, because Rex had already sped ahead with a series of rapid Flintstone-style pushes off the pavement. Leif hopped on his bike, and even with the late start, easily caught up to him. As Rex placed his scooter on the grass near the curb, Leif let down his kickstand, acutely aware of the pounding in his chest. Now that he was standing with Rex at the foot of Alicia's lawn, he was having second thoughts. Call her, Rex said, nudging Leif with his shoulder. Oh, right. Leif put one loose fist over his mouth and delivered one of his patented turkey mating calls, a sort of seductive gobble that he'd mastered a few years earlier at Baptist Boys Camp. They focused on Alicia's first-floor bedroom window, her lamp already on, illuminating the opposite wall, which featured her collection of posters showcasing her excellent taste in pop culture, including one of Larry and Balky from the TV show Perfect Strangers. Leif had always wondered if Alicia saw Rex and him as Larry and Balky, And in this moment, as he prepared to profess his deepest feelings for her, he realized that he was definitely bulky. He didn't know whether that was good or bad. Maybe his proclamation could wait. Just then, the window opened and Alicia's dark curls emerged, blocking both Larry and Balky from view. She flashed a sly grin when she saw the dark outlines of her best friends. Leif grinned back, his second thoughts evaporating. He felt a serenity wash over him. He didn't need to work on his precise wording. He would let the rhythm of the moment guide him. It was all so much simpler than he'd... Suddenly, Alicia screamed, as two hands grabbed her shoulders and attempted to yank her back inside. Leif and Rex stared in the darkness, speechless. "Get off me!" Alicia shouted, writhing back and forth. "Her parents?" Leif asked, but Rex was already in a crouched run, his backpack sticking out like a turtle shell as he headed toward the window. Leif followed, but this time catching up was harder. He'd never seen Rex run this fast in his life. It wasn't fast enough, though. Just as he got to the window, a full 2 seconds before Leif, Alicia's grip on the windowsill gave out, and she disappeared. "Rex! Leif! Humber!" Alicia shouted from inside. Leif ignored the tiny voice in his head that wondered why she shouted Rex's name first. He peered in and shuddered. 2 men in beige coveralls were lugging her out of her bedroom. "What the hell?" "Get off her!" Rex shouted through the window as he climbed in after them. "Yeah," Leif added, following Rex's lead, and wincing as he felt the sting of a splinter from the sill dig into his calf. He had no idea what the two of them would do once they caught up to the kidnappers, but it turned out to be a moot question. Alicia's door was slammed shut when they were halfway across the room. Rex tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. One of the men was blocking it. "Come on," Rex said to Leif. They threw their bodies against the door. "Go home, boys," a strange but familiar voice said from the other side. Leif and Rex stopped pushing. They stared at each other, dumbfounded. "Mr. Boykins?" Leif asked. "I know you're trying to help Alicia," he continued, "but we know what's best for her." "You don't understand," Rex shouted. "Two guys just..." "We know, Rex," Mr. Boykins said. "Please, this is hard enough as it is." Leif heard a scuffling from outside and ran to the window, where he saw the men putting a still writhing Alicia into the back of a white van parked at the curb. If Leif hadn't been so busy playing his stupid love confession, maybe he would have noticed it earlier. Rex vaulted out the window past Leif, shouting, "Get off our friends, you jerks!" Leif threw himself out the window after Rex, but without deciding exactly how he was planning to land, ended up face first in the grass. He leapt up from the ground in time to see the van's back doors slam and heard the engine rev up. "Easy with that whip. Easy with that lip, son," one of the men said, still standing by the closed doors. "You could be next." He popped into the passenger seat and the van took off. Rex had reached his scooter, which he picked up and began wildly propelling down the street with his giraffe-ish left leg. It certainly looked like he was going fast. Leif ran to his bike, flipped up the kickstand, and jumped on his pedals all in one motion. "Don't follow them," Mr. Boykins said from the front porch, clad in a bathrobe, an arm around Mrs. Boykins as she wept into her hands. "Please, Leif, after what happened today, don't make this any worse for Alicia than you already have." "I'm so sorry," Leif said, and he suddenly understood that the Boykinses hadn't actually been okay with the whole pushing Mr. Whitewood onto a girl situation. Not at all. Leif knew where Alicia was being taken. He took off on his bike, Mr. Boykins shouting his name 3 more times before his voice faded into the distance. Leif was impressed with how far up the street Rex had gotten, but he was clearly out of breath, and the van was almost out of sight. "They'd taken her to the Whitewood school," Leif said. "Oh, shit," Rex said between gasps. "We gotta go there." He continued to swing his leg around and pump his scooter down the narrow road after the white speck in the distance. Once again, Leif had no idea what the plan would be once they caught up to the abductors, but he knew they had no choice but to follow. He felt stupid for not seeing this coming. After you grilled the hands of a man who runs a reform school, chances were good you'd end up there. Leif had always heard the stories about kids snatched away in the night, but like most people, he dismissed them as urban legends, designed to scare them into being good kids who went with the flow. Seeing one of these snatchings up close and happening to his best friend was traumatic, to say the least. Leif looked for Rex, as he often did in anxiety-provoking situations, knowing that his calmer, less panicky energy would be grounding. But no one was there. Rex had fallen far behind. Leif experienced the briefest moment of satisfaction before rapidly U-turning. "Leave the scooter," Leif said, pedaling alongside him. "Hop on my pegs." Another burst of intense satisfaction. Rex had been making fun of Leif's unnecessary bike pegs for years. "No, you go ahead," Rex said. "It's not the scooter. I just haven't developed my scooter leg enough yet." Leif couldn't believe that. Even now, in hot pursuit of their kidnapped best friend, Rex refused to admit defeat. "Your scooter leg?" Leif couldn't help but ask. "Yeah, the pushing leg. It takes months to have a reliable scooter leg," Rex insisted. "So I'm just going to take these guys on alone?" Leif asked. "No, I'll definitely catch up. My leg's about to get a second wind." "We're wasting time." Leif could no longer see any sign of the white van. "Just get on my pegs." Rex kept scooting. "I agree it's your scooter leg and not the scooter," Leif said. Rex abruptly hopped off his scooter, and tossed it under a shrub on the side of the road. He stepped into the two pegs, jutting out from Leif's back wheel, his hands on Leif's shoulders. "Burn it." And Leif did. He pedaled like he'd never pedaled before, rocketing forward even with the extra 150 pounds of lanky human freight. The fiery pain in his thighs was overwhelming, but as the boys rounded the last turn on Creek Road, the white dot reappeared ahead, and that was all the motivation Leif needed. Soon, the lights at the Whitewood School gate came into view, the only indication that there was anything behind the pine trees lining the road. On the rare occasion when Leif had passed by the school, secluded as it was on the far side of town, he had been unsettled with how the utilitarian chain-link fence seemed much more like the gateway to a prison than to an educational institution. But that was the least of his concerns now. By the time he pedaled them to the entrance, one of the men was locking the gate, then hopped into the van and headed up the long driveway towards Alicia's new home. "Alicia!" Rex shouted, hopping off the pegs and grabbing the fence, shaking it to punctuate his anger. Leif joined him, passionately rattling the links as headlights briefly illuminated one side of the three-story school in the distance before the van disappeared behind it. Alicia was gone. "We gotta get in there, man," Rex said, reaching up as if he was about to climb the fence. "And then do what?" Leif asked. "Alicia's parents sent her here. If we somehow get her out, they'll just send her back." "But..." Rex still had both hands and one foot on the fence. "So that's it? We're just giving up on her?" I don't know," Leif said, wiping his wet cheeks, grateful for the cover of night. "Maybe." "Ah!" Rex shouted, pulling himself away from the fence and violently kicking at nothing. Save for the light from the lampposts on each side of the gate, darkness was all around them. Leif stared down the shallow driveway, feeling like his heart had been injured. It didn't seem real that he wouldn't see Alicia tomorrow, or the next day. She was right there in that building, just a bike ride away, and yet she might as well have been on the other side of the globe, or in Nebraska. "We should probably get back," Rex said, seconds or minutes later. "I don't want my parents to realize it's my punching bag in my bed, and not me." "You think they'd fall for that?" "No. That's why I'm saying we should get back." "Yeah." Leif flicked his kickstand, let Rex step up on the pegs, and started pedaling towards home. "I'm out had an overnight shift, so it's not even home yet. You want me to drop you off at your scooter?" "Nah, I'll get it tomorrow." They rode to Rex's house in silence. "Hey, Leif," Rex said out of nowhere, and Leif had the funny thought that maybe Rex had read his mind. He was about to tell Leif what a great couple he and Alicia would make someday. "Good call on the bike pegs." "Or not." Leif nodded and kept pedaling.